Meanwhile, the coronavirus is still taking a heavy toll when it comes to jobs. Today's latest unemployment figures show 1.5 million laid-off workers applied for government benefits last week, though the number is down. It is the 10th straight week of job losses since the peak in mid-March. Unemployment benefits are helping laid-off and furloughed workers stay afloat. Those jobless payments reached $94 billion in May, 6 times the previous record set in 2010.
Mark Hamrick is a senior economic analyst at bankrate.com, and he joins us now for more. Mark, it's good to have you. So what do you make of these 10 straight weeks of declining jobless claim numbers?
It's great to see declining numbers, Jenna and John, but we're still extremely elevated. If you take the special pandemic unemployment assistance program that was part of the CARES Act and take those numbers and add those to the new claims that you talked about in the lead-in, we're talking about nearly 30 million Americans who are part of continuing claims. That's quite astounding. It's consistent with what we saw in the May employment numbers, where we had about 21 million Americans jobless, another 10 million working part-time who'd like to have full-time work. So I think we're balancing optimism and realism here, not exactly certain where to go. And every day that we get some less than optimistic news on the virus, that gives pause with respect to the economic recovery as well.
Mark, so there's still a lot of fluctuation in the market. So are we able to say whether the worst of the economic crisis is behind us?
Based on what we know right now, John, I think that that's a plausible scenario. But as Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell cautioned at his news conference, this is going to be a long slog. The Fed itself doesn't see the unemployment rate going below 9%. Before the end of the year. Our own Bankrate economic survey indicated that it could remain as high as 10% through May of next year. So that's in line with what we saw during the worst of the financial crisis and Great Recession. So we're hoping for better, but we also need to, I would say, maintain a somewhat sober outlook because we're balancing the reactions to the medical or healthcare crisis as well as the economic crisis.
Yesterday, the Fed announced that it'll keep interest rates low for the foreseeable future. How do you think this will help stimulate the economy?
Great question, Jenna. As we reported our mortgage rate survey at Bankrate, we saw a record low in mortgage rates this week, right below 3.5%. And so this is helping to keep the housing market fairly robust. But you can't have a macro economy or broader economy that's suffering with a housing market that would be flexing its muscle forever. So we need well-qualified consumers out there to borrow. So low rates will do some of the heavy lifting here, but ultimately it's a strong job market, what we need. In the meantime, we do have low interest rates that will help on the borrowing side.
Speaking specifically about the stock market, it was pretty volatile today. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed down more than 1,800 points. What do you think this means for the recovery overall?
We're reminded, John, that volatility works to the downside and the upside, and we had seen a more than 30% bounce in the major averages from the lows earlier this year. Indeed, the setback that we just experienced took those major averages all the way back to just before Memorial Day. So I wouldn't connect necessarily the performance of Wall Street with Main Street. Sometimes they're quite disconnected, but certainly it's something that can weigh on consumer confidence if we were to see a prolonged further pullback in the stock market.
All right, Mark Hamrick with bankrate.com. It's always good to have you on. We appreciate your insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you.